Yeah, I'm just going to wing this show.
Attention, people of Earth, I have an important announcement to make.
It's an excursion into the odd and into the very, very different.
Good morning.
The future. He came from the future. And so do I.
But you said that he wasn't human, that he was some other kind of being.
Another world and another time.
After he's stalked, we must get rid of him immediately.
Quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road. The only station that matters.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. And you too. Morning intro. Tony Caravan with you for another edition of Tony Caravan Live on this rainy day. Yes, it rained and I was already up into my attic checking out the... so far, so who knows? We're only supposed to get a tenth of rain. Excuse me, a tenth of an inch of rain. And if you didn't hear me early on, I'm just going to wing this show. I'm just going to wing it. There's the view of camera 2 outside. As you can see, we're, looking at. There was this thing on here at one time that was just called Black Box. What is that? I see. How did I make that? And could I make another one? See, the camera goes all the way over into the bookshelf where it says camera 2 view outside up there in the corner. We'll have to watch when the next vehicle goes by and see if we need to put like a black box or something behind that. I'm not sure if you're able to copy things or not. I don't know. Let's see here. Scene, display capture, color source, browser. These are all my options within this program. Siphon client. That's interesting. Scene. Media source. And that gives you a choice of things. All right. I won't waste any more time with that. I'm sorry. It's early in the morning. I just got up. The title of this show is There Were Giants on the Earth in Those Days. And I put up a little bit of a broken quote that says ... with daughters of men, and they bear children to them. The same became mighty men, which were old men of renown. And of course, we're looking at a image of a giant Sumerian god, if you will, and these little Smurf type characters. And I take that from this gentleman, and it's not this guy. There's a website called. I'm going to show you the site because I always like to give credit where credit is due. So we're going to go to display capture, and then we're just going to show this thing. And this guy Eden Saga, right, or Saga. And he's been doing this for 10 years, and he's asking people for donation. I was about to donate, but then it was asking me for a password to my PayPal or something, and I don't like that was weird. But I guess he's somewhere overseas, so you got to be careful with that because I already had a problem with that. But I'll figure a way. I'll probably send the guy a few bucks since we're talking about him. But at the very least, you can support him by going to eden-saga.com, and of course I ended up at the /en for English. And I originally And I just noticed that he's pretty much on top of things. Today's the 10th of February, and of course it's daytime for those folks over there. And this is fascinating. I didn't even click on it. The warrior was a woman. And the guy's put together his site pretty well. I don't know. It could be, I mean, let's see down here. Conception, go base, I don't know. It could be he's using some kind of, because it says previous post. You know, it is probably some kind of template thing, you know, like a WordPress for over in Europe. Excuse me. But, you know, it's the hunter man, the gatherer woman is the image we have of prehistory. The roles established in our present society. Marked by this a priority, early archaeologists declared that this hierarchy was natural. Blatant delirium that went unnoticed until a recent time when primary sexism became unacceptable. Many researchers now reject this theory because artifacts revealed over time in total contradictions with this view. What if the warrior was a woman? Well, you know, it's quite possible. I mean, you know, and anybody who watched Wonder Woman, I mean, the current Wonder Woman, man, that girl, whew, she's outrageous. But what drew me to this site, and I'll go back, and I encourage you to just go to this, because if I discover something, if I'm going to use some content, you know, as a point of departure, I would like to, you know, the Giants of Summer, and not as in the season. And originally I was going to use this thing, and all this started because of a dream. This morning when I woke up to this giant, these two, I don't know how to describe it, like this giant character, you know, like these bald-headed, hairless, giant, you know, type of, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but something you'd see in a movie, almost a stereotypical, you know, like not, you know, just this big character, overall big giant character, but strong, you know, not, you know, and then a smaller like version of that thing, and he was pouring water over the head of this thing that he previously, this smaller version almost of himself, I guess. And of course I woke up to that, and then in effect the water dripping on outside my window, which forced me to go up into the attic to see that it was indeed raining, and, you know, water was coming. And the old leakaroonie was leaking. But nonetheless, it was still interesting, and I was in that adventure prior to the water leaking, waking me up. That just seemed to get incorporated into the dream. But there was like this other stuff going on, which is basically like in most dreams, many dreams has, you know, since passed out of my conscious mind. The ancient giants came from the stars. They have created us to take over from them. Smaller beings would enjoy more room since the planet had become too small for giants. Right? And we will soon do the same when this planet will definitely become too small for us. That's interesting. I guess that's his opinion. And this is a guy who's going through all these ancient writings, and he's doing some quotes, right? And then similar to that quote that I had, which was not taken from this site, but he has a quote. Now, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, the Son of God saw the daughters of men were beautiful, and they took for wives all they liked. Now, the only thing about this is, and this is weird to say, but I was thinking about this as I was walking down the stairs, you know, to come down here. I slurped a little bit of my coffee there. I got to get the old caffeine thing going. I don't know what I'm doing here, drinking this caffeine. Bulletproof coffee. A-game. But it's the idea of like, well, if these things were giants, I mean, it's not anatomically possible to have, saw that the daughters of men were beautiful and they took for wives all they liked. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's one thing if these guys were like 6 foot, even 7 foot tall, and they came upon a bunch of women who were 5'5". I mean, that goes on today, right? Isn't that the whole thing with, you see these basketball players and they've got these wives, or big giant football players and they've got wives who are like 5'2", eyes of blue or something. Okay, that, that is understandable, and you can see it anyway. So it's just kind of weird. That's the only weird thing I always had about this giant, portion, the giant story. They might have created us to take over after them. After a planetary civilization that lasted 150,000 years, the giants knew they were condemned by the upcoming increase of weight that would become unbearable for them. So they created kind of Smurfs better adapted to the new standards of gravity. So I guess this guy's talking about, some gravitational change. And then he goes on to deal with, this is really far out, but the same name is found in Great Britain too. Eden-Burg means Fort of Eden. So you see these Edinburghs or Edinburghs, these the names of towns. Fort of Eden. This, in a whole different reign, I was trying to explain to someone before that, the Red Lion Inn was a place for the, some of the secret society groups, and you'd find a lot of these Red Lion Inns, and that was a place where you could, seek refuge, and you could find someone there if you were, and say the words or show a ring or something along that line. Our story is Adam's saga for DNA saga. I don't know. Again, this is a translation probably. Or Eden saga for Eden saga. No sooner had he become created that Adam gave thanks to Enki and began to worship the gods. But he's saying the word worship meant work, and that meant work. And so he's combining, Gilgamesh with the Bible, and then with like just contemporary translations of, of this concept of giants, which I just wanted to get into, and I just wanted to share that. But it looks like the dude has some interesting stuff, and it's worth, it's worth looking into. And I was going to talk about this either way, and I just did like a search, a little quick giant search, and and that seemed to be the best thing that came up, and so I went with it. And I advise you to maybe do the same if you're interested in that kind of thing. And also, while I was looking at it, I'm just babbling, today as like so many days.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I don't know. This is unscripted. This is just some thoughts that were on my mind this morning when I woke up. It's one of those days when my voice, I just don't seem to have my voice. Excuse me. But I was just thinking in terms of, what started this off was not just that little dream sequence I had before, while I was still sleeping and just at the moment of wakefulness. But I guess even maybe it was still on my mind while I walked up to the attic. I was looking at trying to see where the rain was coming in. And it seems like I don't know, actually, it's kind of scary. The rain seemed to be coming in at a spot that is where it shouldn't have been coming in, which explains why it was getting into my room, which means all the work I did the other day might have been for naught. So I'll know better later on, because it's going to rain on and off all day today and the weekend. And cold, it's going to be days where it gets to 40 refrigerator temperature, and then days where it gets down below freezing. So, and some snow. So February's shaping up to be another January, and like I was saying, this is just classic weather. We're back in the old cycle. Like I say, you live long enough and everything repeats itself. It's, and it's kind of, in some ways it's a little disheartening to see how things are. I mean, it really is some kind of cycle. Everything is really some kind of grand cycle. I think I fixed the old mustache issue. Soul patch. Side of my face is not really shaven. It's just that this lighting doesn't show it. If you see me in the daytime, I'm really unkempt. And have a little bit of a clogged nose. And I don't know if that's because I went to the grocery store yesterday. I don't know what the incubation period is of this latest cold virus or whatever it is. If it could be that quick, if it could be 12 hours or 10 hours or something, I don't know. Or it's just been damn cold. And I caught a cold. I don't know. Anyway, I take so many vitamins and eat so many healthy foods that nothing usually lasts more than 24 hours with me, tops. It's not like my nose is running or anything, or I have a sore throat or any headache or anything. But like I said, I was up in the attic, and so while I was doing my task, you see the truck goes all the way over to that thing. So the question is, what is this black box? I'm just going to do this really quick. Black box, properties, and it appears to be black box JPEG. Okay, so I'm going to new image. And we'll just call it black box 2. Unload when not being used. Browse. And where's black box 2? Oh, I'm just going to use the same file. I guess you could use the same file twice, right? There it is. You see what I'm trying to do? In effect, I'm going to put a black box over here. Because there's even seems to be some weird reflection there. And I don't know if I could copy and paste. I guess you can't. But anyway, I'm going to take this black box, work with me. Actually, was able to copy and paste it. Let's see. Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these black boxes and I'm going to take them below the camera. It's not the easiest thing to do. These programs aren't made for this kind of crazy stuff. Well, that shouldn't happen. Oh, wait. No. Wait a second. If I put it there, if I put it here, oh, it's camera 2. No. I'm sorry for wasting your time. It doesn't seem to be working. There's some kind of weird thing going on there. Oh, wait, that seemed to work. Why didn't the second black box work? What is this? Oh, it's not activated. Let's see what happens now. All right. Well, anyway, what I was trying to tell you is that I have no idea what that shiny weird stuff is there. That just looks strange. I was thinking about how the horror of these giants. I was a real waste of time and a crazy thing. I can't edit it out of this show. I mean, I could, but it'd be an outrageous type of thing I'd have to do. I'm broadcasting the show live, and I just wasted time. I know. And at some point, I'm going to have to blow my nose like right now, and it's ridiculous just because I have to do this. All right, guys.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
I think we're ready to start now. All right. I think I'm ready for the shot, for the close-up. Do you ever feel you have something in your sinuses, like somewhere around here, that it's got to travel a long way to get it out? That's what I feel right now. So it's like I need some Vicks Vapor Rub. All right, so this show is definitely not going down in history as any kind of, great event. And all the work I did yesterday to improve this camera and the stuff I tried to do today is just not enhancing anything so much. But, like, what would you do if there were these giants? Right? Yeah, forget about this idea that people have of, the fear of, of these gods, these ancient so-called gods, right? Like, the hell with that. That's one thing. Yeah, it's not blocking the truck. So, yeah, it's kind of working what I've done. You know what I mean? Or the idea that the people were these ancient imbeciles, right? That's nonsense. The human brain is the human brain. It's been that way since we've been, Homo sapiens sapiens, or whatever the heck we are. Whatever anthropologists call us now. So we still have the same thought pattern, thousands and thousands of years ago. Once we became what we are. But that still doesn't mean, I'm just saying, just imagine encountering, a race of people taller than, if you recall, Andre the Giant, right? But I mean, somebody like bigger than even that, and a whole race of them, an army of them. Because Andre the Giant in reality wasn't that big. I mean, he fit into the wrestling rink, right? So like, imagine like people twice his height, but like athletic build, right? Because he wasn't necessarily flabby. You know what I'm saying? And they had technology to boot. And they were these literally giants, not like, some skinny basketball player or something, or even Shaquille O'Neal type, who's not necessarily some skinny guy, but I mean, still fairly tall. Not like Shaquille O'Neal, double his height, but with a similar, but built proportionally. All right. Well, like I say, anatomically, it would be impossible for them to mate with these daughters of men, right? I mean, without getting into, graphic detail. Do you know what I mean? That, that's too much. It's one thing for Shaquille O'Neal to, okay? And, somebody might find that, But I mean, the idea of, no, you get double that size, and then it's just not anatomically possible, right? It's not, like I was said in a previous show about something totally different, about, doing a project. It's not humanly possible. So what do they mean with this idea, the daughters of men, and they bear children to them? The same became mighty men, which were of old, or the mighty men of old, men of renown. These are quotes out of biblical quotes. And like I say, this stuff's found on tablets, Gilgamesh, all these. This is not, these are stories that are, exist in numerous books, unrelated books, and in areas even on different continents. It's like it's like a lot of these other stories, the flood stories, for example. In fact, this is tied into the flood story in that it was the flood story that in one version of that, the flood wiped out these giants, or their, and their offspring, which were causing all kinds of problems. Right. They were trouble. Now, I don't know if they were trouble to the gods, small g, who were a step above these giants, the people in the mothership, like Enki and all that stuff. There's so many different, angles to come at this history, prehistory of humanity. Right? The before people, even. I talked about before. And time is circular, so.
The future. He came from the future.
But you can't deny, that something went on. Right? I mean, you didn't you didn't make these carvings, and in some cases these carvings are giant. Some people think some of these things are small, and some are small. I mean, some are just tiny little. Some of these clay Sumerian things, they're like little roller things people used to roll out on a piece of clay. It's like an early printing press if you really think about it. If you know anything about a printing press, the way it works, even the mimeograph, you have a cylinder, and on the cylinder is the image around, so that as the cylinder spins, okay, let's pretend that this is a cylinder, not a coin, that this has depth to it. Well, as a piece of paper comes through the machine, the cylinder spins, and then you see that's how the image is offset. That's why they call it offset printing, if you never heard that term. And the image is offset from the cylinder, which is covered with ink, onto the piece of paper that's, that this thing spins. Well, apparently the Sumerians were doing that with like clay. They were creating cylinders. But the fascinating thing about that is, when they originally created the cylinder, was the cylinder flat, and did they somehow make it round so that it would become a cylinder so it could reproduce the image flat? Or were they just so good at like making things, the craft of that? I don't know. I mean, all these things are very fascinating. And then it's the imagery. Even when you just look at this thing, in front of us on the screen, this sun, is this, what is this image on that seems to be on the table or something, right? Is this some Saturnian, like the Saturnian Sun? Some people say we had at one point, there's this whole idea that we were Saturn, was our sun. And then our sun came in with its, planets, and there was some kind of major clash, and then the current solar system was formed at that point. And there was all this plasma and electric arcing that caused all these things, like these they almost look like riverbeds on Mars, or like the Grand Canyon was dug out this is the electric universe, Thunderbolts project type of theory, right? This wasn't erosion that dug out those gorges and things. This was actually performed by, plasma discharges. And then many of these petroglyphs that almost look like they're creatures were actually formations that have been reproduced in labs, with plasma and stuff like that. It's very fascinating and interesting stuff. And like I say, I'm just winging this show based on, on the things I've, learned over the years, observed, and all that kind of stuff, and listened to and watched and all that. I'm not scripted here. I'm just going where it goes. But these same symbols, like if you look over, and again, let's focus on this image here I have at the side. Everything has some sort of significance. Like you didn't carve detail into stone, and like I was saying, in some cases these things are very large and were a major effort to produce. In other instances, some of these clay tablets, some scrolls that they found, a lot of this stuff is just daily activities of, what went on in these old cities. I'm sorry I have to blow my nose again. Please forgive me. It's a live show. I can't do anything about it. Man, I just feel like I have to get something out. I can't. I'm sorry. Very sorry. Very sorry.
Go ahead and shoot. You'll be doing me a favor.
Yeah. And it's it really surprising in many ways why, how modern historians and archaeologists just pay so little attention to this stuff. They ignore it. For practical purposes, they ignore it. It sits in museums, and there might be courses at some key universities that teach this kind of stuff. It's you could take a course in certain ancient cultures, whatever. But it's not by any means is it taken seriously to the point of like it being brought into the conversation, among modern scientists, in modern archaeology even. Beyond the point of discovery of artifacts. Do you follow what I'm trying to say? It's not like, or anthropology even. In other words, it's like, well, they have 1,001 excuses why that guy sitting on that chair, box, whatever, is 3 times the size and girth of those other people who are looking at him and coming before him. Is it just to display this idea that he was more powerful? And then why are those like sun-like, like if you look at the symbols like within his little frame, like he's in his little thing, protected from them, separated from them, that there appears to be on the far, there's 3 circles there. One seems to be almost a duplicate of the big one on the table that the first guy has his hand on. The first small guy, Smurf, was this guy, other guy called them. But to the left is what appears to be maybe the moon. And then to the right, it's hard to make out what that is. It's worn down. It's similar to the one in the center, but it seems it might be different. It might be different. And then of course there's some language there, some cuneiform or something like that. Well, there are people that can read that today. I'm not one, right? But, this stuff's found all over the place. And it's even in these, so-called, in religious texts. So why is that, Yeah, I just have to do a quick experiment. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sorry for being obsessed with this, but I try hard to make this set, this program, and all this stuff. So yeah, I don't know. What would you do if you encountered a giant, a real giant? Right? An army of giants. And if they had technology, So in effect, like, because modern military, the first reaction of, military governments and stuff is like, okay, we'll shoot them, with such and such weapons or whatever. But what if they had technology that just rendered those weapons, useless, right? There's this guy in this we showed earlier was talking about gravity and different things like that. But what if they had the ability to just take their hand and go like this and flip over a tank, or a jet comes at them and shoots a missile and they just, wand it, wave it away, whatever. They're always holding stuff. They always have things that seemed, that were probably misinterpreted by the people drawing these things. Or, when were these illustrations, when were these like carvings made? Were they made while the gods still, these giants gods still were among them? Were they ordered by them to be made intentionally? Or is this after they left? Were these people trying to tell the story of it or something? And in some cases, you could read and, there's all kind, like I say, there's so many books, and many of the books, the old ancient books, they contradict one another. I mean, not completely, but, they have the similarities of telling the same story. It's like the flood story is like universal. But there's like all kinds of variations on that theme, which makes you wonder, right? But yeah, anyway, I mean, that was a lot of time, and I know I wasted a lot of time fiddling around with my screen and stuff. But it was it's just something that, I thought, it's worth talking about. Pondering these things. Especially at this time, which, because I don't know if you really like take me seriously because even on my semi-serious show, yesterday was like a semi-serious show. I mean, I watched it back. It was very slow moving. I was talking slow. I don't know. It was like a slow motion show almost. I watch my shows back. But you got to remember, it's early in the morning usually when I do these. Today it's a little bit later. It's 6:01 a.m. Eastern time on the 10th of February. And temperature today, let's see, I didn't even check the weather. Let's see what it is today. Because today's supposed to be a warmer day. So it's currently like 37 degrees outside. It's supposed to stay 37, which I find that hard to believe, and then go down to 27 overnight. So it's going to get down to below freezing. But now tomorrow, that's thunderstorms, and it'll be in the 40s. But then, come Sunday, Sunday night, they're saying it's going to go down to 9 degrees. And like, Saturday, Sunday and Monday are going to be like 20s for the high, and the nights are going to be in the teens or single digits. So it's like, January redux, and then people think, oh, it's 40-some degrees, the sun's out today, and then they go out without a hat on and all this stuff. I wear hats inside. Wearing my Matrix Resurrections hat. Right. From Warner Brothers. For free. But yeah, I mean, at a time when it looks like, there's this, I use the word confluence of events that seem to be heading our way over the next several years to decade or so, which is really, in our time, in all of our times, technically, unless you're very, very old, that there are so many possibilities. In fact, I was surprised yesterday, right before I went to sleep last night, I was watching a woman interview, or I watch YouTube, from some show. I can't even think of the name of it. Seen it a couple of times before. Some attractive blonde anchor woman. It's not. She's speaking in English, but she has a very strange accent. Like it's not British. She's not Australian or, from the UK. It's some strange. I think it's it's like some people. She wasn't Asian looking per se, but I mean, it's hard to say. There are so many people, so many intermarriages today between Europeans and Asians and stuff like that. And then these wealthy people end up going to, they go to school in these, English speaking schools. So they go to Europe, or they, or go to Great Britain somewhere, and they go, end up studying somewhere. And so they have this British, it's partly British accent that they picked up from years of being in there, which I could attest to because having just spent, I've been having, when I was younger, I had 3 different trips to Australia. And the last time I was there for a fairly long period of time. And those trips were like kind of closely related. In fact, I think the first trip or two, like I think I had my first was like a 90-day visa or something, 6-month visa. I don't know what it is, but in other words, I just left basically because my visa was running out, and I kind of touched base, got another visa, and came back type of thing. It was like took one of those, did that thing. Because they wouldn't give me a work visa or something. I don't know why. It was weird. Even though I was a producer of a movie. But I just didn't go through all the paperwork that I guess I should have. It didn't really matter. But when I came back, I had like this kind of slight Australian way of speaking. It wasn't a purely Australian accent. But people were thinking I was like doing it intentionally. Right? They would say, stop that. Like, stop. What do you, And I would be like, what? And it was just being around, just having spent, a year on and off in a country and being, everything you see, the television, when you go and order food at a restaurant, people you're talking to. I mean, I was living life in Australia. So I every day speak, and it was coming in the ear, and eventually it was just I was somehow you conform to that. Doesn't take long to pick up an accent and to pick up certain, things. So you can imagine somebody who went to college somewhere. It's a real weird aside,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
But I was trying to talk about, they were talking about the economy, and eventually they got into Bitcoin and stuff. But she mentioned an interesting thing because she was pushing this guy who's like kind of the expert, one of these so-called experts on cryptocurrency, Bitcoin type of thing, and who's really pro crypto. But I was surprised that she's the first time I ever heard anybody say it. She was trying to talk about the possibility, the weaknesses in crypto, as using it as, a hedge against, the central banks, the crash of the U.S. dollar and other runaway inflation and other things that are happening, socioeconomic things that are going on that the average person is oblivious to. That's why I was watching this show. And in one of the litany of things that she was, quizzing this guy on, she mentioned, and electricity, you know. And which is the thing that like most people just like I taught as a common theme on this show is this idea is, yeah, you know, what do you do if you have all your money, if you had most of your money in cryptocurrency, digital currency, and and suddenly you're dealing with like, some kind of grid down situation, due to some solar activity. I mean, allegedly, there's two stories that came out yesterday or the day before regarding Elon Musk's satellites, his internet system that he's put up. He lost like 40 satellites. And there happened to be a CME at the time, and I don't know if it was SpaceX themselves that did the release, or if he tweeted it, or if it's just the way it was reported, but there was like blaming the CME on these 40 satellites, being destroyed, rendered inoperable. Now you got to remember that the satellites that he's putting up there are small. They're not like what you think the normal satellite being some kind of big thing, with solar panels. And these are real small things that he's putting up there, and they're in very low Earth orbit. Excuse me. They're like 100 and I don't know.
Really funny. Really funny.
Those guys always laugh at me if I have like a, hold back a, belch or something. Yeah, I'm fighting off like a cold or something, I think. It's okay. By the time I get to my lunch and have my garlic and turmeric and all that stuff, that should be enough to knock anything out of my system. So, but then, Ben Davidson from Suspicious Observers, he was clarifying it and put it in perspective to the weakened magnetic field of the Earth, which I often talk about. And that is that, as our magnetic field becomes weaker and weaker, and the migration of the north and south magnetic poles, that we're more susceptible to cosmic rays and things, all sorts of things coming in. And that it wasn't so much, this CME that hit the Earth was not something that normally would be considered a cataclysmic event, right? And it just so happened that the location of these particular SpaceX satellites and the weakened magnetic field at that particular level of the atmosphere, coupled with the CME, was the perfect storm to take out 40 of those satellites. But, again, this should serve as a harbinger, of things to come, because the magnetic field is weakening and continuing to weaken, which is why we're seeing changes in things like jet streams and what people are attributing to like so-called climate change stuff, and why global warming, never happened, and why it's cold and been cold for a long time. And then they tried to explain why the 10-year pause in global warming, and then they had to just change it to climate change. But the idea is, I don't know how many times to get this through people's heads. It has nothing to do with CO2, okay? You just got to get that out of your head, all right? Look, so-called fossil fuels, which are basically organic, all right, organic materials from the earth, you know, are not, are really, are not the cleanest way to produce energy, but they're the most efficient. It's the biggest bang for the buck. And that over the past several decades, in fact, more than just several, depends on how you define several. Like I said, we have Energy Star appliances. We have filtration and all sorts of things on our vehicles, and our plants are operating with all sorts of filtration, that sort of thing. And so we've come a long way from the days of smog, right? And air pollution, which is really a bigger threat to humans and humanity, than CO2, than a little more sunlight coming in, okay? Which, by the way, is good for us and good for the plants and all that jazz, which in turn gives us oxygen and, the food we need to eat. But, that's not 100%, it's not 100% to say this is the ideal way of producing energy. It's just that we're a carbon-based people and it's a carbon-based civilization, and it's not humanly possible to replace that within a few decades because it's cold outside. Number one, we're in the major population centers around the world, and you can't produce those kind of thermal units, that kind of heat, right? That carbon-based, organic fuels can produce. And we don't have enough nuclear plants, and we had stopped building them. I mean, France, for example, they're pretty much, they got themselves covered because they went the nuclear route. And there are modern technologies and stuff that could begin to be implemented, along those lines. But, I'm still, very upset how they destroyed all of the landscapes with those big white fans that are just now starting to just decay and are not even contributing to the, the grid. And within the next less than a decade, many of those things will just be totally, not functioning. They'll just be like these things making what a beautiful landscape, a view along a highway just look horrific. But at least they'll be no longer working, so they won't be killing the birds, millions of birds anymore. Yeah, so we definitely went the wrong route with that. That T-Bone Pickens, or whoever he was a guy, man. There's been some it's horrific guys. Like, the Bill Gates thing where he's working with some of these universities now, Northeastern universities, not Northeastern University particularly, but, some of the big name Ivy League or big schools in the Northeast. And they're putting this particulate matter up in the atmosphere to darken the sun. And this is the sun. They've got, they're testing this stuff. Actually, actively have been testing this stuff for a number of years. This is like reality. That they're so bought into this idea. And of course, we just had that Tonga volcano go off, which is really actually, there's going to be direct results from that in the southern hemisphere as far as crop yields and all sorts of things, and acid rain and stuff like that. Volcanoes are, it's going to, you get enough of those things, like that going off, and, it darkens the planet and it diminishes crop yields. So the question is, why is Gates and these universities trying to darken you know, the atmosphere, in other words, not allow sunlight through. At a time when it's clear that they were wrong about global warming, and then they called it climate change, and now we've got uptick in volcanic activity, a weakening magnetic field, and they're still going ahead, and they're trying to make matters worse. What are they trying to do? Like bring on the ice age? You know? Like, in other words, Bill Gates is like, he owns more. He, as an individual, he's the biggest owner of farmland. Did you know that in the U.S.? His wife just divorced him, which is, I find, highly suspect. Like, did they have some major argument? Like, is he really up to something that's so bad that even his wife said, I can't be a part of this anymore? I mean, I'm just throwing that out. I have no insider information. But I'm looking at it and going like, what the? And why would you want to darken, the planet like that? And why bring up this CO2 thing? Is this CO2 a problem for these giants? Maybe? Get to be a little bit of like a David Icke there for a second. Are the masters of Bill Gates, in other words, high CO2 levels cause problems for them? Because CO2 is natural for the earth. I mean, it's only a trace gas. It's only 0.004% of the atmosphere. 99.9% of the atmosphere is nitrogen, oxygen, and argon. Right? Methane, water vapor, CO2, they're like trace gases. They're trace gases. And it's still enough for the trees to be green and the flowers to grow and the crops to yield. And then in turn, the flora, right, give us oxygen so we can live. So it's very fascinating and intriguing, but scary at the same time. Just like this concept of giants is scary. If you think about it, I mean, it's just freaking scary. In other words, you may stand there and I may stand here or sit here, whatever, wishing I could blow my nose and say, it's like I have up here, resist. If these so-called giants, these gods, demigods, alien sorts or whatever, lizard people, like I say, everything is wrong and you don't know what you don't know. So as far as I'm concerned, it's open season. Anything's possible, man. I don't, everything's on the table when it comes to, things today. Just look around the absurdities of people. I was walking down the street to the grocery store yesterday and, it's first of all, it was a sheet of ice because the sidewalks, you pay taxes, but nobody cleans the sidewalks, right? And so, I'm taking my life in my hands. I almost slipped a few times. You take a fall like that, you break your neck, you break a leg, it's just, you land on hard ice, concrete, whatever. But I'm looking down because you have to look down because you got to watch where your footing is. All right. You're not looking up. It wasn't like I was reading it, looking at my cell phone. I didn't even have it with. No, I did have a cell phone with me. Actually, my smartphone, which doesn't have cell service. I was listening to music. I was listening to Steppenwolf live version, Born to Be Wild or something like that. But and here are all these masks on the ground, right? As I'd be passing and they're just masks, thrown out of a window, taken off of a face, falling out of somebody's pocket or something. Who knows? Sign of the times. So the point of the matter is, you got a 2.5-year-old virus, probably was created as a bioweapon in a Chinese communist lab. Something that these, pharmaceutical companies have profited on by the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars. Won't go away. Like I say, I may have caught it. Sorry for doing this. My mustache has coffee on it. It like just people just keep catching it and recatching it. That's the thing. So it's like, what is that? One explanation I heard from one guy was that the thing never makes it to your immune system. In other words, where the other one went down into your lungs, deep in your lungs, and that's how it caused complications and why real problems for people, the other so-called variant or whatever. I heard one person, and again, I'm not giving misinformation. This is what I heard. I heard that this latest one, it's like the reason people keep getting it is because it just kind of lives in your upper respiratory system. So your body, in other words, so it's like why I'm compelled to just blow my nose is like something in there. I just want to get my sinuses cleared out. It's not giving my it's not even reaching my immune system. So you have to like do this deep nose cleansing to get this thing out. And then you're fine. Then you're literally fine. Unless for some reason you allow it to get into your lungs, or something. I was always surprised why they never said in the early days when they said wash your hands, social distance, wear a mask, why they never said blow your nose. First thing I do when I come into the house from being, outside where I may or may not have encountered people is I blow my nose. And then I wash my hands. I do that. I wash my hands 30 times a day. I say that all the time. I've always washed my hands. I don't need the government to tell me to do that. I don't need the government to tell me to blow my nose. But I bet if a lot more people blew their nose, there'd be a lot less sicker people out there. People just don't think about it. But anyway, so how does this do? What does it do with giants, being afraid of giants and lizard people and all that jazz? I'm just trying to make some sense of it all. And I realize from the fact that, whether or not YouTube and Google has got me somehow covered. It's 6:25 a.m. There's 2 billion users on YouTube, active users on YouTube. All right? By this point, the people on this side of the world are waking up. But, the billion people, around the other side, in Europe, it's like getting towards lunchtime. And the further east you go, it's like the middle of the day. It's getting into the evening. In Australia, it's like it is evening, night, It's like So it's not as if people don't have access and there aren't billions. Think about it. With that many active users, the odds are that no one is watching this or even out of curiosity clicked on this thing. Graham Hancock or one of these guys, sometimes you can't see the names on these videos and you just see a picture like this. You'd think I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say morning show. Maybe they think it's like, some network thing. I don't know. I guess I don't care. Does it really matter? Yeah. I'm talking to myself and sometimes a couple of friends. I guess that's it. You have to resign yourself to that. It's like the books I've written and the music I've made. Maybe, I mean, I know I've had some random people catch these things and comment, which is always, appreciated. But it's kind of weird, when you see what's going on all around us. And like I say, there's this confluence of events, because I was talking about that woman before who mentioned electricity when it comes to Bitcoin. And then we just happen to have, this event with Elon Musk's SpaceX and Starlink, I think he calls it, those satellites. That just goes and reinforces, underscores the idea that this is real. And there are so many other things, and there's so many scientific papers now that are pointing to this sort of thing. So, tying this into this ancient, I started out talking about this giants and this dream, but I mean, this illustration from this site, which I encourage you to visit, and let me just check my history again, just so I will give this guy credit where credit's due. Eden Saga is the name of his website. Eden-Saga. All right. And I got another one of these while I was looking for that. I'm reporting there was a chat, one of these like weird chat things that have some kind of link in it to go to some, I don't know, some crazy site. I never click on it and don't click on it. I just report it. But they don't show up on chat as chat on your analytics. And that's the weird thing. So how are they sneaking in, and why does Google or YouTube Studio, whatever, why are they so code deficient, so inept that they can't, or are they like allowing this intentionally to come in? I can breathe a little bit better. I'm sorry for that.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't.
Yeah, it's just what you need and not what you don't. Just hanging out with me. Trying to clear out my sinuses. That's a little bit better. So, if we end up having some sort of solar event, as our magnetic field continues to weaken year after year, month after month, or year after year, and we just have even just run-of-the-mill CMEs like we just had. It was a run-of-the-mill one. It was no big deal. I mean, we have these things all the time, fairly regularity. We're not even talking about the potential near extinction event that a lot of people are predicting. The potential is there for that thing to happen. But we have this, like I was talking about, I believe in yesterday's show and previous shows, about our infrastructure, particularly our grid system that's in total disrepair, and how many power outages there are in every city practically across this country. And as the weather gets colder, and we have these Bill Gates guys and universities and volcanoes going off too at the same time, and we're seeing winters, so instead of global warming, we have, we're back into the cycle that was like, it was kind of the 70s, 60s and the 70s. So we must be on some kind of like 50 year cycle. That's how these things are. Everything's cyclical. You have small solar cycles, you have grand cycles, you've got these medium cycles, you've got these great cycles, it's all cyclical. Everything's a cycle, right? The seasons are a cycle, right? The cycle of life, right? And like I say, if you've lived long enough, you've witnessed many, you've witnessed a few different cycles, of different kinds of cycles. Because that's the nature of the beast, right? You've seen, you may have seen a solar eclipse or lunar eclipses. There are cycles, there are things. You understand there are cycles, right? And so, the chance of like a cold winters, which we seem to be heading back into, and tree limbs falling down, getting covered with ice and falling down, I don't know if if these things are hiding. I'm sorry to keep being obsessed with this. In other words, I expanded my camera to show more yesterday. It was an intentional thing. Now, I guess they're just below the angle. I need to raise my camera somehow. That's what I need to do. I need to like raise the angle of it. I'm not seeing as much of the vehicles as I should. All right, well, forget that. Yeah, you see, you can't see the full truck. You're seeing too much porch. Well, bear with me. We're in this together. No, I'm not going to do it now. Change my mind. So at the same time that you have all these problems, and they're serious problems, because they have to do with the quality of life. And people are like, at the same time you have runaway inflation. So I was watching even David Dubine for a little while, his show. It wasn't the greatest show. He's had some good stuff on there, but, it wasn't one of his best. But he was interviewing some guy. And they were talking about potential crop shortages and stuff like that. And they got into the Tonga volcano a little bit. I mean, there's a whole crew of us out there talking about this stuff, but, none of it's really super mainstream. I mean, some people get the thousands and thousands of views. I mean, I'm the guy who gets like 3. But it's still all the same stuff, It's like we're onto it, we're researching it, and finding out more and more each day that this stuff is happening. And so, they were talking about the price of things. And I mentioned a couple days ago, they were talking about the price of fertilizer for big farms, farms that, farms that have like 1,000 acres, that kind of stuff, 10,000 acre farms. And that the price of fertilizer and things like that has shot up, has doubled or tripled or quadrupled. And I mentioned in my trip up just to the hardware store that I noticed that the prices were double on bags of just soil for my, raised bed garden, because I've got some raised beds out there. I have some gardening I just do right out of the soil and whatever. And I try to do some crop rotation, and it does work. And I plant things like beans and different things like that that put nitrogen in the soil and, whatever. And I've had fairly successful, crop yields, for a single guy. I'll show you my garden again just for the hell of it. Get rid of the title card. Show you my old phone. That's my backyard. And so you can see I have a number of raised beds. I mean, that's overgrown. This is 2 years ago. Last year it was even crazier than that, So, but, it's going to be hard this year. A bag of soil that cost like $6.99 last year has cost like $13.99 this year or something. You know what I mean? It's like, why? Right? That's the question. Is this something to do with the value of the dollar? Is this because of the Federal Reserve? And in other words, the cost, your dollar's worth half of what it used to be. And somehow, it's like everything's gone up. I mean, it's like, you go to a pizza shop and it's so dark in here. Some more light on my face. I don't know. I was just noticing that, I don't want light in my eyes this early in the morning. It's still dark outside. But I was noticing yesterday how grainy the picture was. And I was wondering if it was the lighting. And I know people are into this super bright thing. But, I do a morning show, and it usually starts sometimes at 4 a.m. And there's something about the lighting seems to match the time and all of that. That sets the atmosphere, the mood of the situation and all that. But we'll keep it like this for a while. Maybe we'll see what this looks like. So, I don't know, and for there to be such obsession where the main story is about some vlogger, about people who use the wrong words, so-called wrong words. Like, who cares about a word? I mean, anybody who's offended by a word is, you got a problem. You know what I mean? He'd be a little bit more stronger than that. I mean, I understand as a child, nobody wants to be called names, Kid, you're a kid, you could cry because somebody called you a name or something like that. Mommy, they called me such and such in the schoolyard. Right? But now, like, let's go, flash forward to like the major television networks now. And there's somebody on there. And instead of mommy, they called me a name, or such and such said names. Here's a video of them. They're saying, announcer, this guy called me names. Grow up. Yeah, well, no one should have it. Yeah, people should, whatever, have the common decency, whatever. But, so what, though? People are going to do it. All right? And besides, words. Right? So what? Meanwhile, they ignore this giantest thing over here. Like, these giants. Like, what if they came back, man? That's what I was trying to say is, like, you could think you're strong and brave and armies think they can, like, handle this stuff. What if some ship came down made of some like ridiculously strong alloy that we have no idea, and they shot all this stuff at it and the bullets just fucking bounced off it? And they start marching around enslaving people just randomly. They're not going to pay attention to any politician. Like, people think, the whole ridiculousness, how like as if the spaceship would land on the White House lawn. Why would some alien, care about the president of the United States or the Queen of England or somebody like that? To them, you're all the same. You see what I mean? They don't care. Well, they would want them to implement control like in some sci-fi book or movie? No. They would just come down and take control. They just willy-nilly. They don't care if they grab Joe, dementia or Donald J. Gold toilet seat. They're going to grab whoever they want and say, start digging, right? We need some, we need this mineral. We need this. Do this. Give us your women, Where are all the white women at, right? What are you going to do? You're screwed. You're going to run and hide, man, and hope they don't catch you. There's nothing you could do, right? These poor bastards. Of course they're going to look at the guy in the middle's got his hands like put together, I don't know. The other guy's he applauding him or whatever. They're giving this gift. I don't know what's going on, but I mean, it's freaky. And these ancient things are freaky. And the idea that we ignore this stuff, or is this some kind of message, is this thing saying, hey, your sun's going to nova every 12,000 years and is encoded there? What's that frickin' ring and that stick that the giant guy's holding, right? What's that? What's the significance of that, right? There's some significance for everything. You know what I'm saying? You don't go through the trouble of creating these things. I've seen images of some of this stuff, like the museum pieces. And it's like, yeah, there's a lot of tiny things, but there's some of these things are huge. They were major works. They took a long time. Yeah. So we're ignoring all the ancient text. There's probably guys out there, and women too. I mean, I'm just using the word, the way I was born, grew up, mankind. That doesn't mean I'm sexist. It just means that, when I was in school, they said mankind, right? You didn't say womankind or whatever. So that's another thing. People just say things and they do things because that's the way it is. Like, got my Elvis collar on. But, maybe all the answers are out there and they've been there and they've been sitting around, for literally centuries of discovery, and they're sitting in our museums or hidden in the Vatican archives. That Vatican archives, man, they need to go in. If ever, forget about this sending troops to Ukraine and worrying about Russia. Why don't they send troops to the Vatican, right? If you really want to do something, I mean, I'm against all sorts of violence and, and that kind of stuff. But, if you're going to do something crazy like that, instead of going to these desert, oil-based places or some kind of thing. I mean, even the Ukraine thing is over oil, it's that whole dirty oil deal that Dementia Joe was involved in and his kid. It's not about Russia. Well, there's a pipeline. Russia is, an oil producer, which makes no sense because the powers that be supposedly don't want oil. So what are they trying? What's they're still involved in oil wars. You know what I mean? The whole darn thing is just hypocrisy for profit, right? They claim to have these moral standards and beliefs, but clearly their behavior doesn't conform to that, whatsoever. It's all pretense, right? They're just marionettes of of the corporatocracy. The media and politicians are marionettes, right? And you're a marionette too, because you fall for it. But I say, no, why don't you surround the Vatican and demand that they open up the archives to the public, and out in whatever that center, big circular center area where people gather for audience with the Pope, just set up a series of tables with like digital scanners on them. We're not going to steal their, I don't say we should steal anything. Just say you cannot hide the knowledge of mankind, of histories, particularly at this juncture in time. You can't hide this from the world. And so, set up a bunch of tables with scanners now and just go in there and bring all those books out. And you could wear the white gloves like they do in the museums and all that stuff. And just scan all those archives and make them publicly available for researchers or anyone else, so we know what the hell's going on. Because these are some turbulent times. There's some crazy stuff going on. We need to know what's happening, man. Is the sun going to have a nova in the next decade or two? Are we basically facing a near extinction event? Is that the first time you've heard that? You don't know about that? Yeah. Right? What's going on with the magnetic field, Are we going to have a pole flip? What's the repercussions of that? What's in those archives? Probably half that stuff was stolen from the Library of Alexandria. And maybe there's some answers about this picture here, on my screen. Like what the heck? In the so-called Bible, it's saying, the daughters of men bore children, and the same became, they were the men of renown, mighty men of renown. Like what the? Right? That's where you should send your armies. And then say, okay, we're done. Here's your books. Lock it up again, But you had no right to do that. That's what some people say. Rome never even fell. It just kind of like squeezed, just like shrunk into Rome, into the Vatican. And, the Vatican, during World War II, the Vatican sided with the Nazis, right? So they have no moral high ground there. And the scandals of, it's not even worth mentioning all the scandals that have been involved. Those wires. What's going on? Nothing's working right today. Though I do feel much better that I got that cleared out some of my sinuses. But yeah, I'm just asking questions, that's all. And I'm kind of waiting, the show will be, I'm not going to last, the show won't last forever. But I'm trying to see I want to make sure that we're seeing the full picture. How did this thing end up getting down? There we go. Camera 2 view outside. Oh, my Christmas lights are. Did you see that flash? Watch. There was a flash. See? The flash of lights. Right before the sun, the sun comes out. See, the Christmas lights give like the last flash. Couple flash. Excuse me. See it? Isn't that neat?
Really funny. Really funny.
They're laughing because I like kind of almost belched there. Hey, that was neat. We were able to see that like last flash of the Christmas lights. I don't know what that other weird like reflection stuff that's going on there really is. That's like some internal thing. I've got to like research that too. But it's the, like I say,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
it's the morning show. You're just spending some time with some dude, right? He's got some questions, just talking about stuff. It's a free flow of consciousness show. I've got questions. You've got questions. We all want answers. We're not getting it. We're all being diverted by this, politics, this pop culture, and the cult of personality, as I always say. And, there's got to be a reason. What's Bill Gates up to? What's a frickin' liar, the F guy that, sold us out to the Wuhan lab guy who owns stock in the pharmaceutical companies. What's going on with all that stuff? We all want to know. There's a lot of stuff on these trucker things going on now and stuff. It's like, what's the story? Nobody seems to know what's going on anymore. The news doesn't seem, they're not really just they're not telling us like, did you get the truth? Instead, it's just all this like stories. And then they all run the same stories. And then social media, instead of becoming like viable media, like this is a thing, this goes out to all you social media, YouTube millionaires, and what, doesn't it like disturb you when you turn on like somebody on YouTube, right? And it could be Rumble now too, because Rumble's growing, and I'm all for that. I'm on Rumble. You can watch my show. It's like a day late on Rumble. You won't see it live yet, unless they, it's pay to play live right now. But if they decide to go free, I'll do it there. But you can watch my stuff over there if you want to. Quality there, I think, is better than YouTube. It seemed, almost. Not for live, but for like the video. But these guys, they all put up like tweets on their screen and news from like the mainstream media, right? In other words, it's like some guys making, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, on YouTube, right? It's got this big following. They got their little plaque on the wall on the back, right? That they got so many 100,000 or 500,000 followers or something. And, then they say, and then they put up on the screen, the Washington Post said, right? Or, CNN, like, they keep CNN alive, like Trump used to keep CNN alive. He kept calling them fake news and kept saying it. It's like, I shouldn't have just, in fact, I shouldn't have said, if I had one of those things, I'd have to put money in a jar for using the word of those three letters. If people would just stop saying it, all right, they would go away. And it's like they're propping them up. And it's like, if you're going to be a viable source, for people to turn to for information, maybe you ought to hire a couple of reporters, right? This is something you never heard anybody say. But, somebody like Tim Pool, right? Or Dave Rubin, for example, right? Or anybody else. Dan Bongino, right? He's he's on Rumble now, right? But why don't you hire a reporter? At least one reporter. I mean, even on the Daily Show, which was a, comedic thing, they at least had like their reporters, right? Now I know they have their like regular people sitting there on their comfy chairs, they're like crew commenters, right? And sometimes guys like Steven Crowder he goes out and sits at his table and goes out on the street or something like that, which is cool. All right. But what I don't like is that predominantly all of these shows, all they're doing is criticizing or making fun of or using the content from this traditional social media. See those lights? Now that it's light outside, you can see my porch. I think these black things that I've done are working. Let's see, because I'm going to turn them off and see what happens. Yeah, that helps. Let's turn the other one off. Yeah, that helps with gets rid of the background so you can see a clearer picture. But there's still a reflection on the glass coming from somewhere. Where is it coming from? Here. See that? It's coming from here all along. This light. But that affects the light on my face. Son of a. So I need to put something here over in this area to block that. Like a sheet of paper. Yeah. Let's see if I have something. Like just temporarily what I would do. Just if it would work or not. Put a piece of cardboard here for a second. Or is it making it through there? Yeah, that's where it's doing. It's the glass blocks. I have these glass blocks set up here. And so no, that won't do it. It has to block out that light. See, I have a cat who walks by here. I mean, the easiest thing to do would be to do this. Right? But then my face would definitely, you'd have, that just totally diminishes the color. That could do that. That helps. But then I'm back to being Mr. Grainy Man. See, the less light you have on, it's just a video type of thing. There's still some kind of weird glare coming from somewhere. I don't know where that is. A wheeze. All right, man. So we can see the outside. That's my porch. There's still snowbanks out there, even though it rained again this morning. Fortunately, it didn't rain enough to cause too much havoc upstairs. Apple computers screwed up. I keep getting these App Store like update things. But when I go click on update, it's basically telling me like that it doesn't work with my particular thing, my operating system. For example, about this, I'm trying to see, I have Catalina and I just got a fix for Monterey. Isn't Monterey the new one? Is that what it is? The new Apple thing? So Anyway, that's my nice little porch there. That's the street. It's just a regular street. It's a neighborhood. There's no reason in the world why these trucks should be zipping up there the way we see them at like 5 o'clock, going 60 miles an hour. The speed limit out there is only like 35, you know. This camera, let's see. I could show a little bit more of the street. Kind of miss some of the American flag. See, I like it to be, there's only so, that's not bad. Yeah, that's decent. I have to watch it. You know, you have a cat, so a cat might rub up against it, and then you're screwed. Camera 2 outside. There's really nothing here to worry about, so we could put this in here instead of worrying about blocking the chair. Right? Hey, you're just having like an insider, you know, behind the scenes day, partially behind the scenes day. So, I don't know. I think we covered some stuff. I mean, it's interesting to think about. You know, like I said, the whole thing started because of this dream of this giant and this idea that, yeah, I think we'd all be scared to death of giants. And if giants lived during the past, there's any truth to any of that stuff. You know, people say, well, why couldn't you find them fossils and this, that, the other? It's like, you know, the type of flood that they're talking about, you have to read that story, you know, that the CIA classified, that Chan Thomas, you know, story that I read. It basically, it's a near extinction event. It basically just about, it destroys any remnants of civilization when that happens. The sun, literally the outer shell of the sun, you know, expels itself, and apparently in all directions. So it's not like it has to be Earth directed necessarily. In other words, it doesn't matter where we are, you know, in our orbit. And it just, you know, it's this thing. And with it just comes havoc, you know, 1,000-mile-an-hour winds, earthquakes like in the double digits, right? Every volcano basically going off. That's why these people digging themselves underground forget about it. You know, mountains falling and new mountains rising. Tsunamis a mile high. The force of these of winds and those tsunamis, you know, you have, and then the molten lava, and then the atmosphere gets on one side of the earth just gets baked off, and everything gets like disintegrated, right? And then on the other side, it's like then the atmosphere tries to like equalize itself, and then the other side gets flash frozen. That's what happened to those woolly mammoths that we found with like undigested food in their stomach and all that. The Clovis people were, you know, so-called. That's why I say, you know, there's really no indigenous people of North America. You know, that's another one of those everything you know is wrong type of stories. You know? Because, you know, in reality, this font is too big. I'm not like that hell-bent on this concept. Resist, all I mean by resist is do nothing. In other words, resist the temptation to be a you know, social media, to be obsessed with social media and that kind of thing. That's what I'm talking about. Everything you know is wrong. I don't often get a chance to like clear all of these things up at one time, which I'm able to do now. It's 7:08 a.m. We've been at this for almost 2 hours, 10 minutes shy of 2 hours. Thanks for watching the show. If you made it this far, I got to go out and feed the birds. And I'll watch this show back and see if there's anything worthwhile about it. I mean, it stays up. I think, like I said, to me, this is the internet. This is what YouTube was originally designed for. In other words, you're just coming into my living room. In this case, I have a little studio set up. But I mean, you're visiting somebody and somebody's doing a vlog. This is my morning vlog. It's a morning show. It's,
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
That's it. And that's cool. And whether you want to do this, feel free to stop by sometime, stop by for a visit. You kind of get it, and if you see an interesting title, if you go to my ROCKFLUX YouTube channel or my ROCKFLUX.com channel, and you see an interesting title under the videos, check it out. And, otherwise feel free to stop by some morning.
Good morning.
And, and check out my website. Like I say, I haven't built these websites out. By no means are these websites like those ones I showed you at the beginning of the show. They're just places I quick set up. They're like show companion areas where you can get a quick link to my books, my music, or if you want to get one of those hoodies or a shirt with one of my sayings, stuff like that. So check it out. Bookmark rockflux.com, and it's going to get better. I'm going to work on the website. I keep saying this. I promise. This spring, I'm going to rebuild that website and put some of my archives and weird stuff that I have that I've collected over the past, my whole internet adventures, which spans 35 years. Anyway, take care, and I guess I'll talk to you tomorrow. Cheers.